Hello everyone and welcome to episode 4 of Smoke&Spirits. I'm your host, Dominic. And for those of you that are watching, you may recall that the last time around we reviewed Nick Offerman's Lagavulin 11 year. We're going to take a look at something this evening which I'm quite excited about. In the meantime, although you can't see it, night has fallen here and it's been quite hot for the past few days, and we finally got some rain, so there's just a very lovely humid breeze coming in, bringing in with it all of the sort of humid, earthy, grassy odors that we associate with summer. And one of the things that I mentioned before in previous episodes is, for me, the link between the whiskey that I drink and sort of those associations that you can make with it. I don't know if this is true for everyone, but certainly for myself, there's something that you can associate with the color, with the mouthfeel, with the nosing notes, and with the tasting notes for every whiskey that you imbibe. And I'm going to say that probably, obviously our brain is such a powerful thing, giving and gifting to us all of the senses that we use to interpret the whiskey that we drink. But I think there's so much more than that. It's not just an association to be made with the nerves that carry these signals to our brain so we can interpret the taste of our whiskey. For me, there's a lot of imagery going on and there's a lot of association going on. And that's why I have such a passion for the Islay single malts. And with today having had such a break in the heat, with this lovely rain that came down and bringing with it all of these rich summer odors, I thought I'd take some time to share with you guys a poem by the American poet Emily Dickinson. And Emily Dickinson was quite passionate about nature. Many of her poems deal with nature. This one's quite short. It's actually called Summer Shower, and I thought it would be appropriate for this particular whiskey, and I'll tell you why in a second. Summer Shower by Emily Dickinson. A drop fell on the apple tree, another on the roof. A half dozen kissed the eaves and made the gables laugh. A few went out to help the brook that went to help the sea. Myself conjectured, were they pearls, what necklaces could be. The dust replaced in hoisted roads, the birds, jocoser, sung. The sunshine threw his hat away, the orchard spangles hung. The breezes brought dejected lutes and bathed them in the glee. The east put out a single flag and signed the fate away. I thought it was rather appropriate, not only because I am a fan of Emily Dickinson and I am a fan of nature-based poems, but what I'd like to share with you this evening is the 12-year Lagavulin. It's a 2019 special release from Diageo. And Diageo is a company that owns many of the distilleries that you know and love. And I believe Diageo in 2019 put out their special release, which consisted of 8 Scotch whiskies from different distilleries. And this one is from Lagavulin. So one of the things I'd like to point out, I think first and foremost, is that the packaging is quite delightful. And I'll show you a shot of that, a close-up shot. But the box itself is painted and gilded a little bit with a bird, with an eagle. Some people actually have taken exception to there being an eagle on the cylinder housing the bottle, and I don't know whether it's something that had some other associations in their minds. But on the packaging itself is also the thistle. You won't be able to see it from there, but I'll show you a shot, like I said. So, and the thistle is the national flower of Scotland. In fact, some of you may recall from the film Braveheart, where William Wallace meets Merrin for the first time, and he's grieving for his father and his brother that were slain in battle, and Merrin comes up and hands him a thistle, which he then returns her many years later when he comes back to the area that he grew up in. So the thistle is the national flower of Scotland. And the reason why it's packaged that way, and the reason why it has such a theme of nature associated with this particular release, and the eagle is in there as well, is because the theme for that release was rare by nature. That was the tagline. Now, again, there's some fairly bold claims going around all the time in the world of Scotch whiskey, and no doubt many of them are well-deserved. And I was really excited to get my hands on this bottle, and I saved my pennies for weeks on end, and I finally picked up this bottle. Very excited to share that with you this evening. So we've got the 2019 special release Lagavulin 12-year Rare by Nature, and this is a bit of a beast, and I know that we're sort of making the association with it with summer, but this clocks in at 56.5% alcohol by volume. So I don't know if we've already talked about this, but I'd like to take a moment maybe to just go into the difference between sort of the scotches that you may drink sort of on a regular basis and what people call cask strength. So certainly scotches come in many different ABVs, alcohol by volumes. At a bare minimum, they have to be 40%. This one is 56.5, and a lot of the time, anything that's sort of in that 50 to 60 alcohol by volume range is what's considered to be cask strength. Now, I'm going to tell you something that will blow your mind. If you're drinking 40% scotch, in fact, most of the scotch that you're going to drink has been diluted. There's no other sort of way to explain that. It's when it comes from the cask, it's diluted, and that's to help with productivity and sales. There's no sugar coating it. But when you get something that's this high octane at 56.5, or like I said, in that 50 to 60 range, that's where you start to get the cask strength, and it literally means just that. It's been bottled right after coming out of the cask, and this one's a bit of a beast. So let's sort of get into this a little bit here. All right. Now, you know at this point my fondness for adding a drop of water. I want to take my time with this, and I can already sort of tell. So having added the water to the whiskey here, I can see it sort of shimmering in the depths of this pale straw gold dram. And looking at it, it's medium bodied. And when people talk about body, one of the things that they may be referring to is the legs. And I think I mentioned this in the first episode that I posted. So the legs is when you sort of move your glass and you tip it back and forth like this, and you'll see residue around the inside of the glass. And that correlates directly to the sugar content here. And you know, sugar is an important part of most alcohols that are made. And right now I'm not seeing a super thick residue, but neither is it light or super thin. So I'm just gonna go with medium body. The color, like I said, is actually quite pale. It's almost like a pale sort of straw gold, like a hay. Maybe if the sunlight were striking the hay, or actually the first thing I thought of when I looked at this, and again, because I do like to read on occasion, is the story of Rumpelstiltskin, when the princess had to spin straw into gold. And in my mind, even as a child, not that I drank scotch as a child, but in retrospect, thinking back to that story, this is the color that I would associate with the gold that was spun from the straw. So just a very, very bright, clean, and refreshing color. So let's take a little bit of a sniff at this, and I'm gonna try to start up here. So, as you might expect, and you know, it being sort of something that I associate with summer, I think it's just because of the color, honestly, that I made that association. But I had read some reviews about it from some experts that know more about this than I do, and they were sort of mentioning nosing notes and tasting notes that appealed to me. So that's why I actually decided to get this bottle. And in there was supposed to be some lemongrass, maybe a little bit of toffee, maybe a bit of cake, and of course the signature peat and the smoke and the iodine that people really love about Lagavulin. So right off the bat. And you try not to let yourself be swayed by those things, but it certainly gives you something to go on. It's very bright. A lot of these things for me carry green apple notes. For this one, I think it's a little bit sweeter. For this one, it's more like a red apple, almost like a Macintosh apple. And that's fairly pronounced. It's only when you get down a little bit deeper that I'm starting to pick up a bit of that citrus. So maybe this is the lemongrass that they were sort of referring to. Although for me, it's kind of a toss-up between like a sour orange and lemon. But it's very clean and bright. It's only when you get really into the glass that I'm getting the smoke, and it's mostly smoke for me with just a sort of faint underlying hint of peat. I have no doubt that that's going to come through in a big way when I start drinking this. And that's what I've got for now. So it does, and I may already sort of have my brain on summer with it being summer, and maybe having read this poem here, which I hope you enjoy. But this is to me like just a lovely day at the beach, and you've packed a lunch and you're with your loved one, and you've got some nice fresh fruits in there, some red apples, some oranges, maybe some lemons to go with your sparkling water. There may be a hint of the sea breeze in the distance, bringing with it the peat fire smoke and the peat from a fire some distance away. Delightful. All right, let's give it a try. As you might expect, at 56.5, and that was me adding some water to it. Mouthfeel is a little bit overwhelming. It's spicy, it's burny. That's the ethanol doing that, but it's a bit on the dry side, which is almost like a contradiction in terms with all of the sort of fruity notes that I had mentioned before with the red apple and the citrus. It's definitely on the drier side. The finish itself isn't overly long. It's fairly short, and it leaves you with a bit of salt, a bit of brine, and a little bit of seaweed. I'm entirely conscious that this is what I said about the last one, the Lagavulin 11 year. That one, however, the 11 year, the Nick Offerman edition, had a much longer finish than this one, with that cakey gingerbread carrying through almost until the last few moments when it's just ready to fade away, and then you get that salt and a little bit of bitterness. With this one, it's fairly pronounced. So with my second sip, I think we've moved sort of further into the citrus notes, almost to the point now where I'd call this maybe like candied orange peels or candied lemon peels. If you've never had those, they are delicious. I really want to take some time with future episodes to talk about food pairings for some of these scotches, because if you're not doing that, I think you're sort of cheating yourself. Granted, you want to take your time with it and you want to sort of devote an evening to it, maybe if you got some time to yourself, but you won't be disappointed. So I really hope to talk about that with future episodes. So bright, clean, just that bright ocean breeze. You got the fruits, just a faint whiff of smoke. So there's the peat, absolutely, as you might expect. There is the iodine. So the iodine actually, and maybe I misspoke earlier, now that I've had a little bit more of this. So when I say that the finish is a little bit sort of bitter with a bit of salt, I'm thinking it's more like an iodine taste, which again is can commonly be found with a lot of the Islay single malts. Peat's not overwhelming, the smoke's not overwhelming. It's just very pleasant, and it's very cozy. It's like I said, you're having sort of a picnic on the beach, and you've got these bright, lovely notes. The sun is shining. You've got sort of maybe a coolish ocean breeze coming in, and then you've got a little fire at some distance away. But as you get into it, it's just so delicious to have that bright candied orange, candied lemon. I think to me it's a little bit more on the orange side, but more like a sour orange if you've ever had those. And then of course you finish it off with the salt and a little bit of iodine to let you know that this is not just an Islay single malt that you're drinking. This is an Islay single malt from the unmistakable Lagavulin distillery. And again, I think they've made this as part of their special release for a reason. It's a pretty phenomenal dram. And it is juicy, just sort of on the palate, but it is a little bit on the drier side. Altogether, I'm not disappointed that I bought this. Like I said, I was very excited about sort of spotting this and then reading the reviews and then reading up a little bit more on it. And I thought, what better time to try this, because a lot of the stuff that I had read made mention of some tasting and nosing notes that were associated with summer for me. So when you talk about lemongrass, I've got lemongrass growing outside, and I'm quite used to that smell. I love that smell, sort of like a really refreshing, sharp smell, especially when you get into the damp, humid days of summer. And I thought tonight is perfect. We've been damp, we've been humid, we've got some rain. I paired that up with a lovely poem by Miss Emily Dickinson, and just a wonderful sort of sensory, cerebral experience for me, which is something I like to do. So if you get your opportunity to pick up a bottle of the Lagavulin 12-year 2019 special release, I don't think you'll be disappointed. Go into it with an open mind, and I'm making some fairly rash presumptions about all of you. And when I say all of you, I think there's 5 of you watching this. But I'm making some rash presumptions in thinking that everybody who's into Islay is into the really heavy, smoky, dark single malts. But this is clearly something that's multifaceted, as might be expected from an art that's really, really old, like ancient. And during that time, the art itself has undergone so many permutations at every level of its production, and in so many ways that one never ceases to be amazed by the single malts from all of these amazing distilleries. So I'm just gonna leave it there for now while I finish my dram. But until next time, stay thirsty.